champion team must be a team of champions. Welcome to Friday Fallacy. This week we're looking at the fallacy of division. The fallacy of division is when the properties of something are assumed to be shared by its parts. That is, rather than recognise that the parts of something may not have the same properties as the whole, we assume otherwise. This is not a sound way of arguing, as many properties emerge as a combination of parts, rather than being embedded in each part. That a plane can fly in no way means that a single part of it can. That water is wet in no way means that each water molecule is also wet. Some examples of the fallacy of division. Table salt is safe to eat, so sodium and chlorine by themselves should also be safe to eat. This cup is orange, so it must be made out of orange atoms. You can't trust any priests, as the Catholic Church was complicit in child abuse. Of course I'm stronger than her. Women have less strength than men. Not all inferences from wholes to parts are the fallacy of division. The fallacy occurs when we simply assume that whatever is true of the whole must also be true of all or some of its parts. This is false in general, but sometimes can be justified. For example, it is generally true that the parts of something are smaller than the whole. Therefore, we can reasonably argue that if a car is smaller than a house, then every part of the car is also smaller than the house. As long as we have some justification for claiming that the part has the same property as the whole, it is not the fallacy of division. But simply assuming it does is fallacious. One area where the fallacy of division occurs is with stereotypes, or when making inferences about people based on their membership in a group. For example, Aboriginal Australians, as a group, are poorer than non-Aboriginal Australians. But to then assume that any individual Aboriginal Australian must be poor, or poorer than a non-Aboriginal Australian, is the fallacy of division. It is reasonable to argue that it is more likely that an individual Aboriginal Australian is poor, since the majority are, but to argue that they must be is fallacious. Similarly, for any other stereotype, very few groups in society are completely homogeneous, and so any argument that assumes a group member must have a common property of group members is the fallacy of division. This fallacy also occurs in politics and economics, when what is good for society as a whole is assumed to be good for all individuals within the society. This is the basis for some defences of so-called trickle-down economics, or the metaphor that a rising tide lifts all boats. The simple idea here is that if the economy as a whole does well, then each individual will also do well. To assume this is to commit the fallacy of division. In conclusion, the fallacy of division is when we assume that what is true of the whole must also be true of every part. Until next time, keep your fallacies to yourself.